Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted was at DeWine's Monday press conference and has been the point person on education and workforce for the DeWine administration.
The current system doesn't work very well. We've been 741 days where this state school board has not hired a permanent superintendent. The Department of Education was leaderless. The school board is dysfunctional. It's not accountable. And with this new system, it will be. Everybody knows who the governor is. If you like what he does, you can hold him accountable. But it's a way of coordinating things. Look, the governor is in charge of all the pre-K stuff, all of the post-K stuff, K through 12 stuff, but not in charge of K through 12 education, at making sure that's accountable. In education today, it needs to be aligned. We know that children start developing, even before they're born. Their brains are developing. We need to help them become early learners, early readers. Then we got to get them to kindergarten ready. We got to get them to third grade, and then job ready when they leave high school, on to college. That needs to be coordinated and accountable, and right now it's not, and it will be if you get this done.
Now, governors have wanted this kind of power with the state school board and the Department of Education for decades. This is not a new idea. For instance, when Governor Ted Strickland wanted a cabinet-level director of education, you had said that you were concerned that he would use that to block efforts on school choice because you were House Speaker around that time. So why should this governor be able to appoint a cabinet-level director of a new education agency?
I also, when I was Speaker, gave Ted Strickland the ability to appoint the Chancellor of Higher Education. So we started moving that direction when I was Speaker. But now there's no definitionally, look, we have a system, right? Like there's no on and off point. It's just we need to build this thoroughly and make it more accountable. And the state school board, over that course of 15 years that you're talking about, has not done a very good job. And it's dysfunctional. And times change, and we need to change with it.
What's the guarantee that Education Ohio would not be politicized? Because obviously politicians run for governor. What's to stop a future governor who feels differently from the current administration from taking things off into a different course, and then kids have to go along with it?
Well, do you don't think this state school board's political? They have proven to be the most political, unorganized body that we have in government right now. They can't even hire somebody to run the Department of Education. And so a governor is at least accountable. I mean, everyone in this state can go to the polls and say, I don't like that governor. I don't like what he did with education. Let's vote him out. I ask, do you even know who your state school board member is? I bet most people don't. They wouldn't be able to hold them accountable.
Of the 19 board members, 11 of those are elected, and most of those have been Republicans for all this period that we're talking about here. So it's really Republicans who've been in charge of the state school board.
It's not a partisan comment. Everybody is not able to get this done. The members, that system isn't working. But I don't need to focus on them. Let's focus on the positive things that we can do. Think about the opportunity that we have if we can get our pre-K, our K through 12, our higher ed, our adult learning all aligned and accountable so that it's just a better system. Think about this. A governor of the state of Ohio can't even tell the Department of Education to update its website with current information. They don't have to listen to him. It can't tell them to do anything, yet a governor is held accountable for delivery of education services. The system just doesn't function right, and we need to change it.
If this change goes forward, does this take voters out of the process? Because 11 of those board members are elected, and the 1953 constitutional amendment said that these should be elected board members here. Does this take voters out of the process and move it away from them?
Voters vote for the governor. I mean, that's who we're talking about here. Everybody knows who the governor is, and the voters have more say because they get to pick one person that's going to be in charge of this, not 19 people who no one even knows. Like, go do one of those interviews where you talk to people on the street and ask them who their state school board member is, and nobody can tell you. So it's much more accountable this way.
I want to ask you about the Democratic members who filed this lawsuit. One of them has pointed out parallels between what's happening now and ECOT. When you were House Speaker, the Republican created budget included something that you and other Republican leaders had pushed for, the elimination of the independent Legislative Office of Education Oversight, which had studied education in Ohio for 15 years, and it raised concerns about charter schools and ECOT. Of course, ECOT closed in 2018. An audit last year showed the state paid $117 million for students who weren't enrolled. The state's still trying to recover that money. The question is this effort to get rid of independent oversight of education kind of like what happened with ECOT? Should we be worried about another disaster like ECOT if you take away?
No, absolutely not, because no one was in charge of the system then. That's my very point. Actually, ECOT would have never happened if you would have had a governor who would have been accountable for it. But now, because you had a Department of Education and you had a state school board that couldn't agree, you didn't have any accountability. No, that's the problem. No one is accountable for the outcomes in the K-12 system in Ohio. And if we would have had more stringent oversight, things like that are less likely to happen. I never can promise something won't happen, but it's a lot less likely to happen because you would have had a governor who would have been held accountable. And if that would have happened and somebody would have directly been in charge of it, rather than a system, you would have had a different outcome.
So under this proposal that you and the governor and other Republican leaders want to see happen, that the court order is stopping the full implementation of, at least for now, you think there's going to be more accountability, more transparency?
Absolutely. And it will be more functional and more accountable. It will absolutely have. This is the least accountable. When everybody's in charge, nobody's in charge. Right now, you have 19 school board members that nobody knows who haven't hired a superintendent in 741 days. Think about that. And we think that system's accountable. That system is a failure. And right now, we've passed a law. The Department of Education no longer exists. We have a new agency, the Department of Education and Workforce, and this judge is holding up that moving forward, and we need to dispense of this frivolous lawsuit and focus on getting kids educated. Do you know what one thing we haven't had a discussion about in this conversation? Kids. We keep talking about what the adults want to do. Let's get focused on the kids and what helps them become successful.
Democrats have seen this as an attack on the Democratic board members because this all started right around the time that Democrats were elected to the state school board.
Democrats would never have had the majority of the school board. It's not about, look, there are plenty of Republicans that aren't doing a very good job either. It's not about partisan politics. It's about kids. It's about, what's partisan about, hey, I want children to be ready to read by the third grade, and we want them to be successful at that. And if they're not successful, then we want to make sure that we're deploying resources so that we get every kid who can't read by the third grade individual attention, and make sure that they're all proficient in math by the sixth grade. And if they're chronically absent, we're going to deploy people. That's not partisan. That's about kids. What's this lawsuit and this is the nonsense that's going on right now is the partisan stuff. It's actually not even partisan. It's about power. It's about a handful of people wanting to not allow someone to lead. That's what this is about.
I want to ask you about the science of reading idea, which is in the budget. Is there one curriculum, one company that's behind the science of reading, or is the science of reading something that many companies are behind?
It's not a company. It's a way of teaching reading.
But is there a company that's behind the curriculum that'll be used?
I have no earthly idea if companies produce this or who produces the curriculum. It's because it's a science. It's like who produces math? Well, anybody can produce math. This is a science of reading, and what we need to do is help the teachers learn where they haven't learned. Because look, we have some colleges and universities that teach the science of reading, others don't, as teacher preparation for how you teach early learners. This is a philosophy of how you go about doing that. It's not about a company, and what we need to do is to implement it because the data is in. Look, this is something that I remember when I read about conservatives and liberals in the New York Times both agreeing that the science of reading was the way to go. I thought, wow, finally something that people on both sides of the political perspective can have consensus on. You're seeing in other states where they've used it, they've seen dramatic improvements in reading outcomes. Governor's been a strong advocate of this, and it really I mean, we got to get this done. This is what I mean. All this stuff holds up helping kids get prepared for life.